Before we dive into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the crowded streets of downtown Chicago, turning the pavement into a shimmering griddle that seemed to radiate heat in visible waves. Maya Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, careful not to smudge the minimal makeup she'd applied that morning before her shift at the Riverside Diner. Her uniform, a pale pink dress with white collar and cuffs that had seen better days, clung to her frame as she hurried down Michigan Avenue, weaving between tourists snapping photos and business people glued to their phones. She was already 10 minutes late, and her manager had made it crystal clear that one more tardy arrival would mean looking for employment elsewhere. Maya couldn't afford that, not with her mother's medical bills piling up and her younger brother's college tuition due next month. At 23, she carried responsibilities that would crush most people her age, but she wore them with a quiet determination that had become her defining characteristic. The diner came into view, its neon sign flickering even in broad daylight, and Maya quickened her pace, her worn sneakers slapping against the hot concrete. That's when she nearly tripped over it. A thick leather wallet lay directly in her path, positioned so perfectly in the center of the sidewalk that it seemed almost staged. Maya glanced around quickly, expecting to see someone frantically searching their pockets, but the flow of pedestrian traffic continued uninterrupted, everyone absorbed in their own worlds. She bent down and picked it up, immediately noticing its weight and quality. This wasn't some discount store wallet. The leather was buttery soft, probably Italian, and carried that distinct smell of expensive craftsmanship. Maya's heart began to pound as she opened it, telling herself she was just looking for identification so she could return it to its rightful owner. What she found made her breath catch in her throat. Stacks of $100 bills filled every compartment, neatly arranged and seemingly uncounted. Behind them, credit cards with names she didn't recognize, a driver's license with a photo of a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, and various business cards from companies she'd only heard about in news reports. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted the cash quickly, twice to make sure she wasn't imagining things. $10,000 in cash, just sitting there in her hands on a random Tuesday afternoon. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Maya's mind raced through possibilities that felt almost inevitable given her circumstances. This money could solve everything. Her mother's overdue hospital payments that kept her awake at night, the rent that was coming due in 2 weeks, which she was still $300 short on, her brother's textbooks that he desperately needed but couldn't afford. With $10,000 she could breathe for the first time in months, maybe even years. Nobody would know. The wallet's owner was clearly wealthy beyond her comprehension. What did $10,000 mean to someone who carried it around like pocket change? Meanwhile, for Maya, it represented salvation from the grinding poverty that had defined her entire adult life. She stood there on the busy sidewalk, invisible to the rushing crowds, holding someone else's fortune in her hands, and feeling the weight of a decision that could change everything. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her back to reality. A text from her manager asking where she was. Maya looked at the wallet again, then at the driver's license. Alexander James Thornton III. The address listed was in the Gold Coast neighborhood, where apartments started at several $1,000,000. She took a deep breath, closed the wallet, and tucked it securely into her small crossbody purse. Then she ran the remaining 2 blocks to the diner, bursting through the doors with her face flushed and apologetic. Her manager, a perpetually irritated man named Frank who seemed to view every inconvenience as a personal attack, glared at her from behind the counter. Maya mouthed sorry and quickly tied her apron, jumping immediately into the lunch rush that was already overwhelming the other 2 waitresses on duty. For the next 4 hours, she served sandwiches and coffee, cleared tables, and smiled at customers who ranged from generous to demanding, all while the wallet in her purse felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. During her break, Maya sat in the cramped back room and pulled out the wallet again, studying the driver's license more carefully. Alexander Thornton, age 31. The photo showed a man with dark hair styled perfectly, sharp jawline, and eyes that seemed to see right through the camera. Even in a DMV photo, he looked expensive. She found his business card. CEO, Thornton Enterprises. She recognized the name now. Thornton Enterprises was a venture capital firm that had been featured in several articles she'd skimmed while waiting at the hospital during her mother's treatments. They invested in tech startups and real estate developments, moving millions of dollars around like chess pieces on a global board. This man probably wouldn't even notice $10,000 was missing until he tried to pay for something and had to use a credit card instead. Maya pulled out her phone and searched for Thornton Enterprises' contact information. The office was downtown, about a 20-minute walk from the diner. She could go there after her shift ended at 6. But another part of her mind whispered different suggestions. Nobody knows you have this. You found it fair and square. Finders keepers is basically a universal law. You deserve this money more than some trust fund billionaire who's never struggled a day in his life. The internal argument continued through her remaining shift, making her distracted enough that she mixed up 2 orders and earned another glare from Frank. By the time 6 o'clock arrived and she hung up her apron, Maya had made her decision. She would return the wallet. Not because she expected a reward or recognition, but because she knew she wouldn't be able to live with herself otherwise. Her mother had raised her with ironclad principles about integrity, often saying that character was defined by what you did when nobody was watching. Maya had always tried to live by those words, even when circumstances made it painfully difficult. The walk to Thornton Enterprises took her through the heart of downtown Chicago's business district, where glass towers stretched toward the sky and reflected the golden light of early evening. Maya felt increasingly out of place in her diner uniform, surrounded by sleek professionals in expensive suits carrying briefcases and designer bags. The Thornton building was impossible to miss, a gleaming structure of steel and glass that seemed to embody corporate success. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a security desk staffed by 2 guards who looked at Maya with barely concealed skepticism when she approached. "I need to see Alexander Thornton," Maya said, trying to sound confident despite feeling completely out of her element. The security guard, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, looked her up and down with obvious doubt. "Do you have an appointment?" he asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. "No. But I have something that belongs to him. I found his wallet." She pulled it out of her purse as proof. The guard's expression shifted slightly, moving from dismissive to cautious interest. He picked up a phone and had a brief, quiet conversation that Maya couldn't fully hear. After a moment, he hung up and pointed toward the elevators. 37th floor. "Someone will meet you there." Maya thanked him and walked toward the elevators, her heart pounding with each step. The ride up felt endless, the digital numbers climbing steadily while she rehearsed what she would say. She hadn't expected to actually meet this Alexander Thornton in person. She'd imagined handing the wallet to a receptionist and leaving quickly, maybe with a thank you if she was lucky. The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area that looked like something from an architectural magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the Chicago skyline, and everything from the furniture to the artwork screamed sophisticated wealth. A woman in her 40s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a tailored navy suit approached Maya with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're the young woman with Mr. Thornton's wallet?" she asked. "Yes," Maya replied, suddenly very aware of the coffee stains on her uniform and the fact that she probably smelled like French fries. "I found it on Michigan Avenue this afternoon. I wanted to make sure it got back to him." "How considerate," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Patricia Hensley, Mr. Thornton's executive assistant. He's actually here and would like to thank you personally. If you'll follow me." Maya's stomach flipped. She hadn't prepared for this. They walked down a corridor lined with photos of Alexander Thornton shaking hands with politicians, celebrities, and business leaders she recognized from magazine covers. Patricia stopped at a massive wooden door, knocked twice, and opened it without waiting for a response. Mr. Thornton, your visitor is here. The office was enormous, probably larger than Maya's entire apartment. Behind a desk that looked like it cost more than a car sat the man from the driver's license photo, but somehow more impressive in person. Alexander Thornton looked up from his computer, and Maya felt pinned by his gaze, those same intense eyes from the photo now directed fully at her. He stood up, and she noticed he was tall, probably over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that filled a room effortlessly. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, and dark slacks that probably cost more than Maya made in a month. "You found my wallet," he said, his voice smooth and measured. It was a statement, not a question, as if he already knew everything about the situation. Maya stepped forward and pulled the wallet from her purse, holding it out. "Yes, I found it on Michigan Avenue this afternoon. Everything should still be there. I didn't take anything." Alexander took the wallet and opened it, quickly checking the contents. His expression remained neutral, giving nothing away. $10,000 in cash, still here. Credit cards, identification, everything. "You didn't take any of it." "No, sir," Maya said. "It wasn't mine to take." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to her uniform and back again. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya Rodriguez. And you work at a diner, based on your uniform." "The Riverside Diner. Yes, sir. I was on my way to work when I found your wallet." "Maya, do you know how rare what you just did is?" Alexander walked around his desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "Most people in your situation, finding $10,000 in cash with no witnesses, would have kept it. The money would have been effectively untraceable." "I thought about it," Maya admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "I won't lie and say I didn't. But it wasn't the right thing to do. And I was raised to do the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Alexander nodded slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Integrity is becoming increasingly rare in this world. I want to give you a reward for your honesty." He reached for his desk drawer. Maya raised her hand quickly. "No, please. That's not why I returned it. I didn't come here expecting anything. I just wanted to make sure you got your property back." "You're serious," Alexander said, looking genuinely surprised. "You're refusing a reward." "With respect, Mr. Thornton, if I took money for returning something that belonged to you, that wouldn't really be integrity, would it? That would just be a transaction." Maya felt her confidence growing as she spoke. "What I did shouldn't be special enough to deserve a reward. It should just be normal human decency." For the first time, Alexander's professional facade cracked slightly, and he laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. "You're either incredibly principled or you have no idea how much I would have given you." "Probably both," Maya admitted with a small smile. "But either way, my answer is the same. I should get going. I have to catch 2 buses to get home, and the evening routes are always packed." Alexander pushed off from his desk and walked to the window looking out at the cityscape. His next words came slowly, as if he was making a decision in real time. "Maya, I'm going to be honest with you. Finding my wallet today wasn't an accident. I test people. I've been burned too many times by individuals who pretended to have integrity until money was involved. So periodically, I plant that wallet in public places with significant cash inside, and I watch to see what people do. My security team tracks the wallet with a GPS chip hidden in the lining." Maya felt her face grow hot. "You tested me? You set this whole thing up?" "Yes," Alexander said, turning back to face her. "And you're the first person in 8 attempts who has returned the wallet with all the cash intact and refused a reward. Most people take the money and run. A few have returned the wallet but expected or demanded compensation. You're the first to do the right thing simply because it's the right thing." Maya didn't know whether to feel honored or manipulated. "So this was all fake?" "The money was real," Alexander said. "The situation was real. Your decision was real. The only thing that was orchestrated was the opportunity. I wanted to see who you really were when faced with temptation, and you showed me. Maya processed this information, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I don't know how I feel about being tested without my knowledge. That's fair, Alexander acknowledged. But consider this perspective. In business and in life, we face tests every day. Most of them we don't recognize as tests until afterward. I created a controlled environment to see your true character, and what I saw impressed me more than you can imagine. So what now? Maya asked, crossing her arms. Do you give me a gold star for passing your secret test? Is there some kind of certificate for being a decent human being? Alexander smiled at her sarcasm. Actually, I have a different proposition. I've been looking for an executive assistant, someone I can trust absolutely with sensitive information and significant responsibility. Patricia is retiring in 3 months, and I need someone with genuine integrity, not just a polished resume, someone who does the right thing even when nobody is watching. Because in my world, that quality is worth more than any EMBA. You're offering me a job? Maya couldn't hide her shock. But you don't know anything about me. I've never worked in an office. I don't have a college degree. I serve sandwiches for a living. I know you're honest when most people aren't. Alexander countered. I know you have principles that don't bend under financial pressure. I know you work hard, because you ran to return my wallet even though you were worried about being late to your shift. My security team did a quick background check while you were on your way here. I know you're supporting your mother through cancer treatment and helping your younger brother with college expenses. I know you've been working 2 jobs for the past year and haven't missed a single shift at either one. You researched me? Maya felt violated and oddly flattered at the same time. I research anyone who interests me, Alexander said without apology. It's not personal, it's how I make good decisions. And here's my decision. I'm offering you a starting salary of $80,000 a year, full benefits including health insurance that will cover your mother's treatments, and a signing bonus of $50,000 that you can use however you need. You'll start as Patricia's assistant for the 3 months before she retires, learning everything you need to know. After that, the position is yours. Maya's knees felt weak. $80,000 was more money than she'd ever imagined making, let alone the $50,000 bonus. It was life-changing, problem-solving money. But something made her hesitate. Why me? Really, there have to be hundreds of qualified candidates who would jump at this opportunity. Thousands probably, Alexander agreed. But none of them just proved their integrity the way you did. In my position, I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, connections, access, status. Everyone has an angle. I need someone on my team who doesn't think like that. Someone whose first instinct is to do the right thing rather than the profitable thing. That person is worth far more than any Ivy League education. Maya wanted to say yes immediately. Every practical cell in her body was screaming at her to accept this incredible opportunity. But a small, stubborn voice in her head made her pause. Can I think about it? Alexander's eyebrows rose. You want to think about it? Most people would have accepted before I finished the sentence. Maya took a deep breath. Mr. Thornton, 6 hours ago I was a waitress worried about making rent. Now I'm standing in a billionaire's office being offered a job that seems too good to be true. My experience tells me that when something seems too good to be true, there's usually a catch. I want to make sure I'm making this decision with a clear head, not just jumping at money because I desperately need it. Alexander stared at her for a long moment, then laughed again, that same genuine sound of appreciation. You continue to surprise me, Maya Rodriguez. Most people see an opportunity and grab it without thinking. You see the same opportunity and pump the brakes because you want to make sure it's real. That's exactly the kind of thinking I need on my team. He walked back to his desk and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. Here's my personal cell phone number. Think about it overnight. Call me tomorrow with your answer, one way or another. And Maya? Yes? Regardless of your decision, I want you to have this. He opened his wallet and pulled out a stack of bills. $5,000. Consider it a thank you for your honesty. Separate from the job offer. No strings attached. Maya stepped back instinctively. Mr. Thornton, I already told you I don't want a reward. I know, but I'm giving you one anyway. This isn't payment for returning my wallet. This is an investment in the kind of person I want to see succeed in this world. You could refuse it on principle, or you could accept it and use it to help your mother or your brother. Either way, your integrity remains intact. The money sat on the desk between them, crisp $100 bills that could solve so many immediate problems. Maya warred with herself, pride fighting against practicality. If I take this money, it doesn't obligate me to take the job, she said carefully. No obligation whatsoever, Alexander confirmed. The money is yours whether you accept my offer or not. Maya reached out slowly and took the cash, her hands shaking slightly. Thank you, she managed. This means more than you know. I'm beginning to understand exactly how much it means, Alexander said softly. That's why I offered you the job. Patricia will see you out and give you all my contact information. I hope to hear from you tomorrow. The elevator ride back down felt surreal. Maya clutched the money in her purse, afraid to believe any of this was real. The security guard who had questioned her earlier now nodded respectfully as she passed. The evening air felt different somehow when she stepped outside. The same crowded Chicago streets transformed by possibility. She didn't take the bus home. Instead, she walked, needing the time and movement to process everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed continuously with texts from her mother asking where she was. But Maya needed this moment alone with her thoughts before explaining what had transpired. By the time she reached her small apartment in a neighborhood that real estate agents euphemistically called emerging, she had mentally spent the $5,000 a dozen different ways. $1,500 to catch up on rent and utilities, $800 for her mother's most pressing medical bills, $1,000 for her brother's textbooks and fees. The rest would go into savings, an emergency fund they desperately needed. But the job offer was a different question entirely. Maya made herself a cup of tea and sat at her tiny kitchen table, pulling out Alexander Thornton's business card and staring at the handwritten phone number on the back. She thought about her mother, currently asleep in the bedroom they shared, exhausted from another round of chemotherapy that their inadequate insurance barely covered. She thought about her brother Marcus, working part-time at a grocery store while trying to maintain his grades in pre-med courses, constantly worried about whether he'd have to drop out. This job could change everything for them, but it also felt too fast, too convenient, too much like a fairy tale that would turn into a nightmare. Maya pulled out her laptop, an old machine that took forever to boot up, and began researching Alexander Thornton more thoroughly. What she found was both reassuring and intimidating. Articles in business journals painted him as brilliant but demanding, someone who expected excellence and didn't tolerate mediocrity. Interviews revealed a sharp intellect and a tendency to challenge conventional thinking. There were photos from charity galas where he'd donated substantial sums to causes ranging from cancer research to education funding. But there were also stories about his reputation for being difficult to work for, with high turnover in positions close to him. One article called him exacting and uncompromising. Another described him as a genius who doesn't suffer fools gladly. Maya wondered if she was being a fool for even considering turning down his offer. Who walked away from $80,000 a year plus benefits? But another part of her, the part that had been shaped by years of struggling and surviving, knew that jumping into something without understanding all the implications was how people got hurt. She was still researching when her mother emerged from the bedroom, moving slowly with the careful steps of someone whose body was fighting a war on multiple fronts. "Mija, you're home late," her mother said in Spanish, their household language. "Is everything okay? Did something happen at work?" Maya closed her laptop and gestured for her mother to sit down. "Mama, something happened today. Something big." She told the whole story. From finding the wallet to the revelation that it was a test, from refusing the reward to the job offer, From her hesitation to the $5,000 currently hidden in her purse, her mother listened without interrupting, her dark eyes growing wider with each detail. When Maya finished, silence filled their small kitchen for a long moment. "Your father would have been proud of you," her mother finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "You did the right thing with the wallet, not because you expected anything, but because that's who you are. That's who we raised you to be." "But what about the job?" Maya pressed. "Is it crazy to hesitate? Do I just take it and be grateful?" Her mother reached across the table and took Maya's hands in her own thin fingers that were still strong despite everything. "Mija, listen to me. Gratitude and wisdom are not opposites. You can be grateful for an opportunity and still question whether it's right for you. This man, this Alexander Thornton, he seems to respect your caution. He didn't pressure you. He gave you time to think. But Mama, $80,000. We could finally breathe. You could get better treatment. Marcus wouldn't have to work so much. We could move somewhere better, and those are all wonderful possibilities," her mother agreed. "But they can't be the only reasons you take this job. You need to think about whether this is something you can do well, something that will let you keep your integrity and your sense of self. Money solves many problems, but it can also create new ones if it comes at the wrong price." Maya felt tears threatening. "When did you become so wise?" Her mother smiled, the expression transforming her tired face. "When I had a daughter who thought I wasn't paying attention." "Maya, you've been taking care of this family for so long. Maybe it's time to think about what you want, what you need. If this job is something you want to try it. If it doesn't work out, you're resourceful. You'll figure something else out." That night, Maya lay awake in the small bed she'd slept in since childhood, staring at the ceiling with its familiar water stain that looked like a map of Italy. She thought about her life trajectory up until this moment. The scholarship to community college she'd had to turn down because her father died suddenly, and someone needed to work full-time to keep the family afloat. The dreams she'd put on hold, then eventually packed away completely, because survival took precedence over ambition, the slow grinding away of possibilities that happened when poverty became your full-time occupation. This job offer from Alexander Thornton wasn't just about money, though the financial security would be transformative. It represented a door to a different kind of life, one where she wasn't constantly one emergency away from complete disaster. But it also came with risks. What if she failed spectacularly in a world she knew nothing about? What if Alexander Thornton's standards were impossible to meet? What if she was just setting herself up for a very public, very humiliating failure? By morning, Maya had made her decision. She waited until a reasonable hour, 9 o'clock, before dialing the number Alexander had written on his business card. He answered on the second ring. "This is Alexander Thornton." "Mr. Thornton, this is Maya Rodriguez. I've thought about your offer." There was a pause, and she could hear what sounded like traffic in the background. He wasn't in his office. "And what have you decided?" "I'm going to accept the position," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But I have conditions." She heard what might have been a chuckle. "Of course you do. I'm listening." "First, I need a written contract that clearly outlines my responsibilities, expectations, and what success looks like in this role. I don't want any surprises or moving targets. Second, I want to understand the termination clause. If this doesn't work out, I need to know I'm not going to be left worse off than I started. And third, I want permission to continue taking night classes at community college. Eventually, I'd like to finish my degree." "Those seem like entirely reasonable conditions," Alexander said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I'll have my legal team draw up a contract that addresses all 3 points. Can you come to my office this afternoon to review and sign it?" Maya checked the time. She was supposed to work the lunch shift at the diner. "I need to give notice to my current employer first. It's not right to just walk away without warning, even if they don't appreciate it. I need to know I did it properly. Give your 2 weeks' notice, Alexander said. I'll pay you for those 2 weeks at your new salary so you're not losing income. Your start date with Thornton Enterprises will be 3 weeks from today, which gives you a week between jobs to handle any personal matters. That's very generous, Maya said, surprised again by his consideration. It's practical, Alexander corrected. You'll be handling sensitive information and significant responsibilities. I want you to start focused and ready. Not stressed about money or feeling guilty about how you left your previous job. One more thing, Mr. Thornton. Maya took a deep breath. Why are you really doing this? You've already established that I'm honest. You could find someone with actual experience and qualifications who's also honest. Why take a risk on someone who might not work out? Because potential is more valuable than experience when it comes with the right character, Alexander said. Experience can be taught. Integrity can't. I've built my career on calculated risks, Maya. You're one I'm willing to take. Are you willing to take the same risk on yourself? Yes, Maya said firmly. I am. Good. I'll see you this afternoon at 3. We'll review the contract, and then I'm taking you to dinner to celebrate. You can't refuse because it's a business dinner. Technically your first assignment. Understood. Maya hung up and sat motionless for a moment, letting the reality sink in. Then she called the Riverside Diner and asked to speak with Frank. He was predictably irritated that she was quitting, muttering about unreliable employees and the inconvenience of finding a replacement. Maya apologized sincerely and offered to help train whoever they hired, but Frank just grunted and told her to work her shifts and not cause any drama. Her mother cried when Maya told her, happy tears that mixed relief with pride. Marcus, when he heard the news via a video call, actually yelled with excitement before asking detailed questions about the salary and benefits that revealed just how much the financial pressure had been affecting him too. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Maya worked her final shifts at the diner, trained a high school student who would take her place, and said goodbye to regular customers who had become familiar faces in her daily routine. Some were happy for her. Others seemed resentful that she was escaping a life they were still trapped in. Maya understood both reactions. On her final day, she cleaned her section with extra care, left her apron folded neatly in her locker, and walked out the door feeling an unexpected pang of nostalgia for the job she'd often hated. That same afternoon, she met with Alexander at his office to review her contract. He'd been true to his word. The document was clear and fair, outlining her duties as executive assistant, her salary and benefits, and a termination clause that included 3 months' severance pay if she was let go without cause during her first year. There was also a provision for tuition reimbursement for college courses relevant to business or her role. Everything was more than Maya could have hoped for. She signed with hands that only shook slightly. Welcome to Thornton Enterprises, Alexander said, shaking her hand formally. Patricia will start training you next week. Between now and then, I want you to do something for yourself. Rest, prepare, spend time with your family. You're about to enter a very demanding world. Make sure you're ready. The business dinner he'd mentioned turned out to be at a restaurant Maya had only read about in the lifestyle section of the newspaper. The kind of place where entrees cost more than she used to make in a day. Alexander was already there when she arrived, dressed more casually than in the office but still radiating that effortless sophistication that seemed to come with generational wealth. Maya had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a simple black dress she'd bought at a thrift store and hoped looked appropriate. You look nervous, Alexander observed after they'd been seated at a quiet corner table. I am nervous, Maya admitted. I've never been to a place like this. I'm not even sure which fork to use. Start from the outside and work your way in, Alexander said with a slight smile. But honestly, etiquette is just memorized choreography. What matters is being genuine. You don't have to pretend to be someone you're not, Maya. I hired you because of who you are, not who you might pretend to be. That's easy for you to say, Maya countered. You were born into this world. This is normal for you. Actually, Alexander said, leaning back in his chair. "You'd be surprised. My grandfather built Thornton Enterprises from nothing. He started as a construction worker and invested his savings in his first property development. My father expanded the business, and I inherited a successful company. True. But I was also raised with the stories of where we came from, and the expectation that I would never forget it. My grandfather used to say that poverty isn't a character flaw, it's a circumstance. But how you handle it, that reveals character." Maya felt some of her tension ease. She hadn't expected this vulnerability from Alexander Thornton, this willingness to acknowledge his family's history. Over dinner they talked about her background, her mother's illness, her dreams that had been deferred, and her fears about failing in this new role. Alexander listened more than he spoke, occasionally asking questions that revealed just how carefully he was paying attention. When the conversation shifted to his work, Maya discovered a passion beneath his polished exterior. He talked about identifying promising startups that could change industries, about the satisfaction of helping entrepreneurs realize their visions, about the responsibility that came with having resources and the importance of using them purposefully. As dessert arrived, something that looked too beautiful to eat, Alexander's expression became more serious. "Maya, I want to be transparent with you about something. The wallet test wasn't just about finding an honest assistant. It was personal." Maya set down her fork. "Personal how?" 3 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Catherine," Alexander said, his voice carefully neutral. "She came from the same social circles, had all the right credentials, said all the right things. I thought we were building a life together. Then I discovered she was embezzling from my company, small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. She'd been doing it for almost a year." Maya's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I prosecuted her," Alexander said flatly. "She went to prison. It was a very public scandal that affected my business and my personal reputation. Since then, I've had difficulty trusting anyone, particularly in positions close to me. That's why I started the wallet tests. I needed to find someone whose integrity wasn't for sale." "And you think that's me?" Maya asked quietly. "I think you proved it," Alexander said. "But I also want you to understand what you're walking into. I can be difficult to work for. I have high standards and I push people hard. I've had 3 assistants in the past 2 years because I'm apparently impossible to please." He said this last part with a self-aware grimace. "Patricia is the only one who's lasted, and that's because she's been with me since before Catherine and knows how to manage my moods." "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. "Because it's only fair that you know what you're signing up for," Alexander said. "This job will challenge you in ways you can't anticipate. There will be days you want to quit, I can almost guarantee it. But I believe you have something most people don't. A core strength that comes from overcoming real adversity. That strength is what will make you succeed where others have failed. If you're trying to scare me, it's working," Maya said with a nervous laugh. "I'm trying to prepare you," Alexander corrected. "And I'm trying to explain why this matters so much to me. I need someone I can trust absolutely because trust has become the rarest commodity in my world. You gave me a reason to believe that person could be you." They finished dinner with the conversation shifting to lighter topics, favorite books and movies, places they'd dreamed of traveling. Maya was surprised to discover that despite their vastly different backgrounds, they shared a similar sense of humor and curiosity about the world. When Alexander drove her home in his sleek black Mercedes, Maya gave him directions to her neighborhood with some embarrassment, watching his expression for judgment as they entered streets that were decidedly not Gold Coast. He showed none, simply pulled up to her building and put the car in park. "Thank you for tonight," Maya said. "For dinner, and for being honest with me about everything. I needed to hear the reality, not just the opportunity." "You're going to do well, Maya," Alexander said with conviction. "I don't say that lightly. I've learned to trust my instincts about people, even after Catherine tried to destroy that ability. My instincts tell me you're going to surprise both of us with what you're capable of." "I hope you're right," Maya said. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Mr. Thornton, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why does someone with everything you have still feel the need to test people? Why not just live in your world with your resources and not worry about whether strangers are honest? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his hands resting on the steering wheel. Because isolation is a different kind of poverty, he finally said. Yes, I have money and success and opportunities most people only dream about. But I'm also surrounded by people who see me as a transaction, a means to an end. Genuine connection becomes almost impossible when everyone wants something from you. Your wallet test, that was you looking for genuine connection? In a way, Alexander admitted. I was looking for someone who didn't want anything from me, who would do the right thing even when I represented nothing more than a lost wallet on the sidewalk. You were the first person to see that situation as simply an opportunity to help someone, not as an opportunity to help yourself. That meant something to me. It still does. Maya processed this, seeing Alexander Thornton in a new light. Beneath the billionaire CEO was someone as lonely and searching as anyone else, just trapped in a different kind of circumstance. Good night, Mr. Thornton, she said softly. And thank you for everything. Call me Alexander, he said with a slight smile. We're going to be working closely together. We might as well start building that trust now. Good night, Maya. The following week, Maya reported to Thornton Enterprises for her first official day. Patricia met her with a warm smile and a schedule packed with meetings, training sessions, and introductions. The world Patricia showed her was simultaneously exhilarating and overwhelming. There were systems for everything, protocols that governed how Alexander preferred his calendar managed, his communications handled, his meetings prepared. There was a language of business that Maya had to learn quickly, acronyms and terminology that everyone else seemed to understand instinctively. Patricia was patient, but exacting, demonstrating once and expecting Maya to remember. You have 3 months to learn everything I do, Patricia explained during their first week. It seems impossible now, but I promise it will become second nature. The key is understanding how Alexander thinks, anticipating what he'll need before he asks for it. That's what makes a great assistant, not just someone who executes tasks, but someone who's always 2 steps ahead. Maya threw herself into learning with the same determination that had carried her through years of double shifts and impossible circumstances. She took notes constantly, stayed late reviewing files and familiarizing herself with Alexander's portfolio of investments and interests, and asked questions when she didn't understand rather than pretending she did. Alexander, for his part, was exactly as advertised, demanding, precise, and incredibly focused. But Maya also discovered he was fair. When she made mistakes, and she made several in those early weeks, he corrected her directly but without cruelty. He pushed her to think critically about problems rather than just accepting surface-level solutions. And occasionally, she caught glimpses of dry humor and genuine warmth that suggested the person beneath the CEO facade. 6 weeks into her training, something happened that tested everything Maya had learned. Patricia fell ill suddenly. A bad case of flu that kept her home for a week. Maya found herself thrust into the role earlier than planned, managing Alexander's schedule solo for the first time, fielding calls from people far more important than she'd ever spoken to, and trying desperately not to let anything slip through the cracks. The week was brutal. Maya worked 12-hour days, survived on coffee and determination, and made more than one panicked call to Patricia for guidance on handling situations she hadn't been trained for yet, but she didn't break. By Friday, when Patricia returned looking pale but determined to reclaim her desk, Alexander called Maya into his office. You survived, he said without preamble. Barely, Maya admitted, collapsing into the chair across from his desk. This week aged me about 5 years. Patricia says you handled everything competently, several things exceptionally well, and only had one minor disaster with the Brennan account that she's already smoothed over. Alexander leaned forward. How do you feel? Exhausted. Overwhelmed, slightly terrified. Maya paused, but also exhilarated. I didn't think I could handle all that, but I did. Every problem that came up, I figured out a solution. I'm sure some of them weren't perfect solutions, but they worked. That's growth, Alexander said with approval. Perfect solutions come with experience. Good enough solutions that accomplish the goal come with resourcefulness and determination. You have both. There's something else I want to discuss with you. Maya's stomach tightened. Was she about to be criticized for something she'd thought went well? Alexander pulled out a folder. You remember the Brennan account, the minor disaster Patricia mentioned? Maya nodded. Brennan Industries is one of Alexander's major holdings. She'd accidentally scheduled Alexander's meeting with the CEO for the wrong day, creating a brief scheduling nightmare. I smoothed that over by being honest, Maya said. I called Mr. Brennan personally, apologized for the error, explained that I was new and still learning the systems, and asked if we could reschedule. He was surprisingly understanding. He was more than understanding, Alexander said, opening the folder. He called me afterward to say he was impressed by your honesty and professionalism. He said most assistants would have tried to blame someone else or make excuses, but you owned the mistake and fixed it promptly. That's exactly the kind of character I told you I valued. Maya felt relief wash over her. I thought I'd messed up badly. You made a mistake, Alexander corrected. Messing up badly would have been trying to hide it or letting it escalate into a bigger problem. You did neither. In fact, I'm moving up your transition timeline. Patricia agrees that you're ready to take on the full role in 2 weeks rather than waiting the full 3 months. 2 weeks? Maya felt panic and pride warring in her chest. Are you sure? I'm sure, Alexander said firmly. You've proven yourself faster than I expected. Besides, Patricia wants to start her retirement early, and I'm not going to deny her that after decades of service. The next 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of final training, detailed handovers, and a retirement party for Patricia that half of Chicago's business elite seemed to attend. On Patricia's final day, she pulled Maya aside for a private conversation. You're going to be wonderful at this job, Patricia said, her eyes misty. But I want to give you some advice that has nothing to do with calendars or contracts. Maya listened intently. Alexander is one of the best people I've ever worked for, but he's also one of the most guarded. What Catherine did to him damaged something fundamental in his ability to trust. The fact that he's trusted you this quickly is remarkable, and I think it speaks to how much you've already meant to his healing from that betrayal. Don't take that responsibility lightly. I'm not sure what you mean, Maya said carefully. I mean that somewhere in the process of proving your integrity, you've become important to him beyond just being a competent assistant, Patricia said gently. I've watched him open up to you in ways I haven't seen in years. Just be aware of that dynamic and be careful with it. Both of you. Patricia's words stayed with Maya as she stepped fully into her new role. The job was everything Alexander had warned it would be. Challenging, demanding, occasionally frustrating. But it was also intellectually stimulating in ways Maya had never experienced. She was learning about business, finance, negotiation, and strategy from someone who operated at the highest levels. She attended meetings where millions of dollars were discussed casually, where decisions made in conference rooms would affect thousands of employees and reshape entire industries. And through it all, her relationship with Alexander evolved into something Maya couldn't quite define. They worked together seamlessly, developing a rhythm where she could anticipate his needs and he could trust her judgment. But there were also moments, a shared laugh over a ridiculous request from a client, a late-night strategy session where they brainstormed solutions to a complex problem, the way his expression softened when she brought him coffee exactly how he liked it without being asked. That felt like something beyond professional courtesy. 4 months into her tenure as his official executive assistant, Alexander called her into his office late on a Friday afternoon. Maya, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. We need to talk about something important. Maya's heart sank. Despite her success in the role, she still carried an underlying fear that it could all disappear suddenly. Was this it? Was he about to tell her it wasn't working out? Before you panic, Alexander added with a slight smile, this is good news. You're not being fired. Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That's a relief. I've been watching you work for the past 4 months. Alexander continued. You've exceeded every expectation I had when I offered you this position. You're efficient, intelligent, discreet, and you've earned the respect of everyone you interact with, which is no small feat in this industry. Thank you, Maya said, unsure where this was going. So I want to offer you something more, Alexander said. I'm creating a new position, Director of Special Projects. It would report directly to me and would involve evaluating potential investments, conducting due diligence on opportunities, and essentially being my eyes and ears on ventures that interest me, but that I don't have time to investigate personally. It's a significant step up in responsibility and compensation. Maya stared at him. I've only been here 4 months. I'm still learning how to be an executive assistant. You've already mastered being an executive assistant, Alexander countered. You haven't just learned the tasks. You've developed instincts for this work. I've seen you identify problems before they become critical and propose solutions that demonstrate strategic thinking. You're wasted just managing my calendar and fielding phone calls. You could be doing so much more. I don't have a business degree, Maya protested. I've never evaluated investments. I don't know the first thing about due diligence. You have something more valuable than formal education, Alexander said. You have judgment. You can read people, you understand motivations, and you ask the right questions. Those skills are more important in identifying promising opportunities than any MBA curriculum. The technical aspects, those I can teach you or you can learn, but the instinct for seeing what others miss, that's innate. Maya felt overwhelmed. This sounds amazing and terrifying in equal measure. It's supposed to be both, Alexander said with a smile. Growth always is. But here's the thing, Maya. I'm not just offering you this position because I think you can do the job. I'm offering it because I trust you completely, and in my world, that trust is worth more than any qualification. Since you returned my wallet, since you've been working here, you've never once given me a reason to doubt your integrity. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Not really, Maya admitted. Let me put it this way, Alexander said, leaning back in his chair. In the past 6 months, I've had 3 different business partners try to cut me out of deals, 2 suppliers inflate their invoices hoping I wouldn't notice, and one of my own attorneys attempt to steer me toward investments he had a secret stake in. I caught all of them eventually, but the constant vigilance is exhausting. With you, I don't have to be vigilant. I can just trust. That trust is what I'm building this new position around. Maya felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just a promotion. This was Alexander extending a level of trust and vulnerability that clearly didn't come easily to him. Can I think about it over the weekend? Maya asked. Of course, Alexander said. But Maya, I want you to know something else. This offer has nothing to do with the salary increase, though there will be one. It has nothing to do with trying to keep you in my orbit, though selfishly I do want you to stay. This is about recognizing potential and creating an opportunity for you to become everything you're capable of being. Thank you, Maya said softly. That means more than you know. That weekend, Maya struggled with the decision. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, to leap at this incredible opportunity, but another part worried she was moving too fast, climbing too high before she had a foundation strong enough to support her. She talked it through with her mother, who was now in remission thanks to the health insurance that covered cutting-edge treatments. She called Marcus, who was thriving in his pre-med program now that financial stress wasn't crushing him. Both of them told her the same thing. Trust herself the way Alexander trusted her. On Monday morning, Maya walked into Alexander's office with her decision. I'll take the position, she said. But I have conditions. Alexander raised an eyebrow, but she could see amusement in his expression. Of course you do. I want to continue taking classes, Maya said. If I'm going to be evaluating investments, I need formal business education to back up instinct. I want Thornton Enterprises to sponsor me for an MBA program, Part-time, so I can still work. Done, Alexander agreed immediately. What else? I want a 6-month trial period where we both evaluate whether this is working. Maya continued. If it's not, I want the option to return to being your executive assistant without penalty or awkwardness. That's fair, Alexander said, though I don't think we'll need it. And one more thing, Maya said, her heart pounding. I want clarity about our professional relationship. We're going to be working even more closely together in this new role, and I need to know the boundaries are clear. Alexander's expression became more serious. You're right to ask for that clarity. There was a long pause before he continued. Maya, I'm going to be honest with you about something I probably shouldn't admit. Somewhere in the past few months, my feelings toward you have evolved beyond professional respect. I find myself looking forward to our interactions in ways that have nothing to do with business efficiency. I value your opinion not just on work matters, but on everything. And I've caught myself crossing mental lines that an employer probably shouldn't cross. Maya felt her breath catch. She'd sensed something shifting between them, but had convinced herself she was imagining it, that it was just wishful thinking from someone who'd developed feelings she had no business having for her boss. I felt it too, Maya admitted quietly. And it terrifies me because I don't want to be someone who confuses gratitude with attraction, or who compromises her professional integrity because of personal feelings. That's exactly why we need to address this now, Alexander said, standing up and walking around his desk to lean against it. Closer to her, but not uncomfortably so. I have two choices. I can pretend these feelings don't exist and risk them interfering with our work relationship. Or I can be honest about them, and we can figure out together how to handle this situation ethically. What do you want to do? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to take you to dinner, Alexander said. Not as your employer to employee, not as a business meeting, but as a man who is fascinated by a woman who continues to surprise him every single day. I want to see if what I'm feeling is real, or if it's just my damaged trust mechanism latching onto the first person who's proven trustworthy. And I want to give you the space to figure out the same thing, without any pressure or professional consequences. Maya's mind raced. This was crossing every line, breaking every rule about workplace relationships and power dynamics. It was potentially disastrous for her career and her financial security. It was also what she wanted more than she'd allowed herself to admit. What if it doesn't work out? Maya asked. What if we try this and it's a disaster? Then we handle it like adults, Alexander said. We have a conversation, we establish boundaries, and we figure out how to maintain a professional relationship. I'm not going to fire you if you date me and decide I'm not what you're looking for. That would make me exactly the kind of person you thought I might be when you first hesitated to take this job. And if it does work out? Maya challenged. What if this becomes something real? Do I just accept that everyone will assume I slept my way to success? That every achievement will be questioned because we're together? Those are fair concerns, Alexander acknowledged. And I don't have easy answers, but I can tell you this. Anyone who knows your work, who's seen your integrity and competence, will never question how you earned your position. And anyone who doesn't know you well enough to understand that, their opinion doesn't matter. Maya stood up, her decision crystallizing. Okay, she said. One dinner. No business talk, no work obligations. Just two people getting to know each other outside of this office, and after that, we reassess honestly. Alexander smiled and Maya realized it was the first completely unguarded expression she'd seen from him. Saturday at 7? I'll pick you up. Wait, Maya said. I pick you up. I want this to start on equal footing as much as possible, and that means I drive myself. I'll meet you there. Alexander looked surprised, then pleased. Fair enough. There's a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park called Giordano's. Nothing fancy, just excellent food and privacy. I'll make a reservation. The week leading up to their dinner felt surreal to Maya. During work hours, they maintained complete professionalism, conducting meetings and handling business without any hint of their personal conversation. But there were moments. A glance that lasted a beat too long, a brush of hands when passing documents. The way Alexander's voice softened when he said her name, that reminded both of them something had shifted. Maya agonized over what to wear, finally settling on a deep green dress that was nice enough for a date, but not so formal that it felt like she was trying too hard. She arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early, her stomach a tangle of nerves and anticipation. Alexander was already there, waiting outside. He wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, more casual than she'd ever seen him. For the first time, he looked like someone in his early 30s rather than a titan of industry. "You look beautiful," Alexander said as she approached. "You look different," Maya replied. "More human, less billionaire. Is that a good thing?" "Very good," Maya confirmed with a smile. They were seated at a corner table with candles and soft lighting that made the busy restaurant feel intimate. For the first few minutes they were both awkward, stumbling over conversation like teenagers on a first date. Then Alexander asked Maya about her childhood, and the awkwardness melted away. She told him about growing up in a tight-knit Hispanic community, about her father who'd worked construction and told terrible jokes, about learning to cook from her grandmother and the summers spent at a community center where she'd discovered her love of reading. Alexander listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite social obligation. In turn, he shared stories Maya had never heard, about the pressure of being the third generation of Thornton men, each expected to exceed the previous generation's success, about his brief rebellion in college when he'd considered walking away from the family business entirely, about the loneliness of growing up with everything except genuine connections. "You asked me once why someone with everything I have still feels the need to test people," Alexander said over dessert. "The truth is that wealth creates a barrier between you and authentic human experience. Everyone you meet wants something or assumes things about you. You become a symbol rather than a person. When I found Catherine stealing from me, it wasn't just the betrayal of trust that hurt. It was the confirmation that even someone I thought loved me actually just saw me as an opportunity." "That must have been devastating," Maya said softly. "It was," Alexander admitted, "but it also gave me clarity about what I actually value. I don't need more money or more success. I have more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I need is genuine connection with someone who sees me as Alexander, not Alexander Thornton III with all the attendant assumptions and expectations." "Is that what you think you have with me?" Maya asked carefully. "Genuine connection? I think we're building it," Alexander said. "You've never once asked me for anything. You've never tried to leverage our relationship for personal gain. You challenge me when you think I'm wrong. You tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable, and you don't seem impressed by the trappings of wealth that everyone else fixates on. That's who you are, and that's who I'm interested in getting to know better." Maya set down her coffee cup. "I need you to understand something, Alexander. I'm not unimpressed by wealth because I'm some noble, non-materialistic person. I'm unimpressed because I've spent my entire life focused on survival. Money to me has always been about solving problems, keeping the lights on, buying medicine, making rent. I don't see it as something to be awed by because I've never had the luxury of viewing it that way." "I understand that," Alexander said. "And I think it's part of what makes you different. You understand the actual utility of resources, rather than just their symbolic value. But Maya, there's something you need to understand too. I'm not looking for someone to be impressed by what I have. I'm looking for someone who helps me remember why any of this matters. You do that. Every time you tell me about your mother's progress or your brother's achievements, every time you advocate for some underfunded initiative I should support, you remind me that wealth is only meaningful if it's used purposefully." The rest of the dinner passed in deepening conversation, that ranged from philosophical to playful. Maya discovered that Alexander had a sharp wit and a surprising knowledge of classic literature. He learned that she could do perfect impressions of all the regular customers at the Riverside Diner and had a secret passion for terrible reality television that she described as anthropological research. When the check came, they argued good-naturedly about who would pay, finally agreeing to split it despite Alexander's protests. "This is not a business dinner," Maya insisted. "We're equals tonight, remember?" "Equals," Alexander agreed, though his expression suggested this was a novel and not entirely comfortable concept for him. They walked out into the cool Chicago night, neither quite ready for the evening to end. Alexander had respected Maya's desire to drive herself, but now he walked her to her car, an old Honda that looked decidedly humble next to the luxury vehicles in the parking lot. "So," Maya said, leaning against her car door, "how do we do this? How do we figure out if there's something real here without completely destroying our professional relationship if there isn't?" "We take it slowly," Alexander said. "We're honest with each other. We maintain boundaries at work. And we give ourselves permission to walk away if either of us feels like this isn't right. No pressure, no expectations beyond mutual respect." "Can you do that?" "I can try," Maya said. "I've never dated my boss before, so this is entirely new territory. I've never dated an employee before either," Alexander said. "So we're both navigating uncharted waters." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender that Maya felt her breath catch. "But I think you're worth the risk of getting lost." Maya surprised herself by standing on her toes and kissing him. Brief and soft. A question more than a statement. When she pulled back, Alexander was smiling. "That was unexpected," he said. "Was it unwelcome?" Maya asked, suddenly worried she'd misread the situation. "Very welcome," Alexander assured her. "Just unexpected." "You continue to surprise me, Maya Rodriguez." "Good," Maya said with a smile. "Someone needs to keep you on your toes." She got in her car, and Alexander closed the door for her, watching as she pulled out of the parking lot. Maya caught a glimpse of him in her rearview mirror, standing in the soft glow of streetlights, and felt a surge of hope mixed with terror at what she might be beginning. Over the following months, Maya and Alexander navigated their dual relationship with careful attention to boundaries and constant communication. At work, they were consummate professionals, maintaining the same dynamic they'd established before their first dinner. Maya threw herself into her new role as director of special projects, quickly proving that Alexander's faith in her abilities was well-founded. She evaluated potential investments with a combination of analytical rigor and intuitive understanding of people that yielded impressive results. Her first major recommendation, a biotech startup developing affordable cancer treatments, not only proved financially successful, but also felt personally meaningful given her mother's journey. Outside of work, they explored Chicago together, finding small restaurants and quiet spaces where they could be just Alexander and Maya, rather than Billionaire CEO and his proc. They went to blues clubs in neighborhoods Alexander had never visited, attended community theater performances that Maya loved, and took long walks along the lakefront discussing everything from philosophy to their favorite childhood memories. Maya met Alexander's family at a formal dinner that felt like a test she hadn't studied for. His mother was gracious but clearly skeptical of the girl from the wrong side of town who'd captured her son's attention. His younger sister, Charlotte, was more welcoming, pulling Maya aside to whisper that she'd never seen Alexander so relaxed and genuine with anyone. Alexander, in turn, spent an afternoon with Maya's mother and Marcus, sitting in their small apartment and listening to stories about Maya's childhood with obvious fascination. Her mother approved, Maya could tell, but also issued a subtle warning later that Maya shouldn't lose herself trying to fit into Alexander's world. 6 months into their relationship, something happened that tested everything they'd built. A business news blog published a story speculating about Maya's rapid rise at Thornton Enterprises, complete with thinly veiled suggestions that her promotions had less to do with competence and more to do with personal relationship with the CEO. The article included quotes from anonymous sources claiming Maya was inexperienced and unqualified, clearly sleeping her way to success in a textbook case of workplace favoritism. Maya read the article in her office, feeling sick. This was exactly what she'd feared. The accusation that would undermine every achievement and reduce her to a stereotype. When Alexander called her into his office, she went expecting him to ask her to issue a denial, or to suggest they end their personal relationship to stop the speculation. Instead, she found him furious in a way she'd never witnessed. "This is unacceptable," Alexander said, his voice tight with anger. "I'm going to sue them for defamation, and I'm going to find out who these anonymous sources are. No one gets to attack you like this." "Alexander, stop," Maya said quietly. "You can't sue every publication that writes something critical. It'll just give the story more attention and make everything worse." "So? We just let them print lies about you?" Alexander demanded. "We let them diminish your accomplishments and suggest you're nothing more than my mistress who traded favors for promotions? They're not entirely wrong, though, are they?" Maya said, sinking into a chair. "I mean, we are in a relationship. I have been promoted quickly. From the outside, it does look questionable. You earned every single one of those promotions," Alexander insisted. "Your work speaks for itself. The Brennan account is stronger because of your negotiation strategy. The biotech investment I was skeptical about has tripled in value because you saw potential I missed. You've proven yourself a dozen times over." "To me, yes," Maya said. "To you, yes. But to everyone else? I'm always going to be the poor girl who got lucky by catching the billionaire's eye. Every success will be questioned. Every decision I make will be scrutinized for whether I really earned my position or whether I'm just your girlfriend playing businesswoman." "Is that what you think?" Alexander asked, his anger shifting to hurt. "Do you think you're just playing businesswoman?" "No," Maya said firmly. "I know I'm good at this job. I know I've earned my place here. But I also know that perception matters, and the perception is damaging not just to me, but to you, and to Thornton Enterprises." "What are you saying?" Alexander asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "I'm saying maybe we need to take a step back," Maya said, the words painful even as she spoke them. "Maybe we need to separate our personal and professional lives more completely. I could take a position at a different company, prove myself somewhere else where our relationship isn't a factor. You want to leave?" Alexander looked stricken. "I don't want to," Maya said, tears threatening. "But I also don't want to be the reason people question your judgment or doubt the integrity of your business. And I don't want to spend my entire career defending my competence because I fell in love with my boss." She hadn't meant to say that last part. Hadn't meant to use the word love. But there it was, hanging in the air between them. "You love me," Alexander said softly. "Yes," Maya admitted, "which is exactly why I need to consider what's best for both of us, rather than just what I want." Alexander crossed the room and took her hands, pulling her to her feet. "Maya, listen to me. I don't care what some gossip blog writes. I don't care what anonymous cowards whisper. I care about you, about us, about building something real together. If you want to leave Thornton Enterprises to establish your independence, I'll support that decision. But don't make it because you're trying to protect me, or because you're letting others define your worth." "But what if they're right?" Maya asked, her voice breaking. "What if people look at us and just see a cleach, powerful man, and the girl he elevated because she was attractive and convenient? Then they're not looking hard enough," Alexander said firmly. "And more importantly, they're not whose opinion matters. Maya, you returned a wallet with $10,000 because it was the right thing to do. You've maintained your integrity through every test and temptation. You've proven yourself in ways that have nothing to do with our relationship. If other people can't see that, the problem is with their perception, not with your reality. But I need you to know something else." He took a breath, his expression vulnerable in a way that made Maya's heart ache. "I'm in love with you too. I've probably been in love with you since you refused my reward, and insisted on doing the right thing just because it was right. You've changed how I see the world, how I see myself, how I understand what actually matters. Losing you would be far more devastating than any business scandal or public speculation. So tell me what you need. Tell me how we make this work." Maya thought about walking away, about protecting herself and Alexander from judgment and speculation. But she also thought about everything they'd built together, the genuine connection that had grown from a chance encounter on a Chicago sidewalk. "I need you to trust me," Maya said finally. "Trust that I can handle criticism and speculation. Trust that I'm strong enough to prove myself regardless of what people assume. And I need to trust you the same way. Trust that you see me for who I actually am, not as some project or redemption narrative." "I do trust you," Alexander said. "Completely." "Then let's face this together," Maya said. "No lawsuits, no public denials, no dramatic responses. We just keep doing excellent work and let our results speak louder than gossip. And if I'm going to stay at Thornton Enterprises, I want to tackle the biggest project yet. Something that proves beyond any doubt that my judgment and skills are genuine." "What did you have to mind?" Alexander asked. "I want to lead the evaluation on the Morrison acquisition," Maya said, referring to a potential multi-million-dollar deal that had been under consideration for months. "It's complex, it's high profile, and it's been giving your team headaches. Let me take point on it. If I succeed, nobody can question whether I belong here. If I fail, at least I'll have failed on my own merits." "That's a massive undertaking," Alexander warned. "The Morrison deal involves multiple subsidiaries, complicated financials, and some potentially questionable accounting practices that need thorough investigation." "I know," Maya said with determination. "Which is exactly why it's the right project." Alexander studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. The Morrison acquisition is yours to evaluate. I'll give you full access to our financial team and legal resources. But Maya, one condition." "What?" "You have to promise me that if this gets overwhelming, if the pressure becomes too much, you'll tell me. Not because I doubt you can handle it, but because I love you and I don't want ambition to destroy the happiness we've found." "I promise," Maya said. "And Alexander? I love you too." He pulled her into his arms, and for a moment the controversy and speculation didn't matter. They were just two people who'd found something rare and precious, and they were choosing to fight for it together. The Morrison acquisition evaluation consumed the next 3 months of Maya's life. She worked 16-hour days, poring over financial statements, conducting interviews with Morrison executives, and traveling to various subsidiary locations to assess operations firsthand. What she found was troubling: questionable accounting practices, undisclosed liabilities, and a corporate culture that prioritized short-term profits over sustainable growth. Her final report recommended against the acquisition, potentially costing Thornton Enterprises a deal that others in the company had championed enthusiastically. Presenting her findings to the board of directors was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of Maya's life. She stood at the head of the conference table, surrounded by wealthy, powerful individuals who'd been making high-stakes business decisions since before she was born, and methodically explained why the Morrison deal was a mistake. Several board members challenged her conclusions. Others questioned her interpretation of the financial data, but Maya held her ground, supporting every assertion with evidence, and demonstrating a command of the details that silenced skeptics. When the vote came, the board rejected the Morrison acquisition based on Maya's recommendation. 2 months later, Morrison Industries collapsed amid accounting scandals that made national news. Thornton Enterprises, because of Maya's diligence, avoided what would have been a disastrous financial entanglement. The business press that had speculated about Maya's qualifications now praised her analytical skills and judgment. Industry colleagues who dismissed her as Alexander's girlfriend began seeking her opinion on complex deals. The gossip didn't disappear entirely, but it was drowned out by professional recognition that Maya had undeniably earned. That evening, Alexander took Maya back to the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date. Over pasta and wine, he pulled out a small velvet box. "Maya Rodriguez," Alexander said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You returned my wallet because it was the right thing to do. You've challenged me, surprised me, and made me believe in genuine connection again. You've proven yourself in every possible way, not just to me but to the entire business world. I love your integrity, your determination, your compassion, and your strength. I love how you never let me get away with anything, and how you make me want to be better than I am. Will you marry me?" Maya stared at the ring, a beautiful but not ostentatious diamond that somehow perfectly reflected who she was. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Alexander, I'll marry you. Not because you're a billionaire or because you gave me opportunities, but because you see me, really see me. And you love what you see. Because you make me want to be braver and reach higher. Because when I'm with you, I'm the fullest version of myself." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed while the other restaurant patrons broke into spontaneous applause, though neither Maya nor Alexander noticed. They were too lost in each other, in the impossible journey that had brought them from a random sidewalk encounter to this moment of choosing forever. The wedding took place 6 months later in a beautiful ceremony that blended both their worlds. Maya's community from the old neighborhood mixed with Chicago's business elite. Her mother, now cancer-free and glowing with health, cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus, now in medical school, served as a groomsman alongside Alexander's childhood friends. Charlotte was Maya's maid of honor, and Patricia came out of retirement to attend with tears of joy for the man she'd worked with for decades, and the woman who'd captured his heart. In her vows, Maya spoke about unexpected paths and the courage to trust when trust felt dangerous. She talked about integrity not as a grand gesture, but as a series of small choices that defined character. She promised to challenge Alexander when he needed it, support him always, and never let either of them forget the values that had brought them together. Alexander's vows were simple but devastating in their honesty. "You gave me back my faith in humanity," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every day with you is a reminder that genuine goodness exists in the world. I promise to never take that for granted, to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine, and to spend the rest of my life proving that my trust in you was the best decision I ever made." As they danced at their reception, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the ballroom windows. The girl who'd found a wallet on a Chicago sidewalk felt like a different person. Someone from another lifetime. But in the most important ways, she was exactly the same. Still guided by the values her parents had instilled. Still committed to doing right even when it cost her. Still Maya Rodriguez at her core. Just now, Maya Rodriguez Thornton, with a partner who loved her not despite her principles but because of them. The fairy tale ending was real. But it wasn't the money or the status that made it magical. It was the recognition that integrity, even when it felt like the hardest choice, opened doors to possibilities more valuable than anything she could have taken. And it was the love built on genuine trust, proven through tests neither of them had expected, that would sustain them through whatever came next. As the celebration continued around them, Alexander whispered in her ear, "No regrets about returning that wallet, not even one." Maya whispered back, pulling him closer, "Best decision I ever made. The absolute best." What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.